All right. So today, guys, as you saw in the text messages that went out, today I want to spend some time focusing on negotiation tactics. We talk a lot about how to get deals, and we talk a lot about marketing. We talk a lot about social media, and we talk a lot about making calls and how the conversation should go and all this other stuff. And I kind of realized when I was putting the class together for today, I was thinking uh, we never really talk about negotiating tactics. And so I want to spend some time talking about that because I promise you, the person who negotiates the best at the table wins all the time, right? And and if you don't have strong negotiating skills, you're going to fall apart at the table all the time. And not only are we going to talk about some negotiating tips, we're also going to talk about signs. We're going to finish today with signs of when someone doesn't know how to negotiate, what you should be looking out for, right? Because that's something smart to look out for if you think about it, right? Like if you know what to look out for when you're looking at your opponent, let's call them the opponent, right? The person on the other side of that contract. Or if they don't have good negotiation skills, you know where you stand already, right? You're already ahead of the game. And so if you're already ahead of the game, then you don't, you tactfully, you know how to attack it. If they don't show any signs of inability to negotiate, then you know you got to step up your game. And you're going to have to understand the differences in different types of negotiations. So today we're going to cover the power of silence. So some of you were at my class in San Antonio, and we talked a little bit about the power of silence. We talked about asking somebody for something and then just shutting up and staring at them until they give you what you want. Right? It makes people feel very uncomfortable. I promise you, I was standing in front of this class. We had about 71, 72 people in the room. And I was standing in front of this class and I just stopped talking and stared at the room. And the entire room, you could see everybody start fidgeting and get nervous. And since I didn't ask for anything, nobody knew what to do next, right? And so it's absolutely 100,000% one of my favorite closing techniques. We're going to talk about anchoring for maximum advantage. We're going to talk about the flinch method. We're going to talk about the win-win perception, right? We're going to talk about tactical empathy and mirroring your clients. We're going to talk about the deadline effect, and we're going to talk about the walk-away strategy. Those are the ones that we're going to talk about today, okay? And again, all of these meetings are recorded, right? So once this meeting is over, Michael, who's my awesome assistant for, I don't know, 3+ years, he's waving at everybody right now. He will get this recording on YouTube, and then he'll shoot it out to everybody by text and email. So if you're registered and you've been getting the reminders and all that stuff, you're going to get that reminder on there, okay? So let's get right into the power of silence. Let's have fun with this one, okay? So the concept here is that most people feel uncomfortable with silence. They feel to rush it, right? Like that's why when I stood there and I looked at that entire room and I just stared at them, like pin drop. You can hear a pin drop in the room. Everybody starts fidgeting because I didn't ask them to do anything, so they couldn't get busy doing something. So start fidgeting, rustling papers and moving things around on their desk because people feel uncomfortable in silence. And when they feel uncomfortable in silence, they feel like I have to do something to fill this void. We can't allow this void, right? And so one of my favorite positions to ever be in using this particular closing method is when I ask somebody for a referral or I ask them for business, right? Like we're not doing business together and we're friends, and I ask you for business. I'm using this silent technique. Okay. If I just closed the house for you, okay, and you just finished at the closing table, and everybody's stoked, and euphoria is running through your body, and all your neurons are pumping up, and they're firing at all a million miles an hour because somebody just handed you keys to a new house. I come right up to you and I go, "Hey, listen, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now?" What are they always going to say? A 10, man, dude. I just got my house, right? And then I go, who do you know in your network that deserves to work with me? And then I just shut up. And there are two things I did there. The first thing I did was I didn't say, who do you know in your network that's looking to buy or sell real estate, blah, 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 right? Too many words. That's number one. Number two, the second thing that I did was I edified myself. If I was able to accomplish this for you, imagine what I would do for your friends and family. So what I said was, who do you know in your network that deserves to work with me? This is not an ego thing. It's not a big-headed thing. It's telling them, please be careful who you refer to me because I'm going to take really good care of them. And so it forces somebody to take a real long thought into who they're going to put in front of me. They don't want to bullshit me. So they're going to put somebody good in front of me. And the other piece is that I'm going to stay quiet until they give me a name. Now, I usually tell people, stay quiet as long as it takes. The problem is that if you're not experienced in this, you also start to feel uncomfortable in the void of noise, right? And you cannot feel uncomfortable, right? If you got kids, try it on them. If they were late home one day or whatever the case is, just look at them straight in the face and go, where were you? And just stare at them like a crazy person and watch how nervous they get. It works on everybody, by the way, right? And so those are the two favorite places I like to use it. But in the thought process here is that in negotiations, the person who speaks first usually loses. Okay, the person who speaks first usually loses. I'll give you this, and this is not the perfect example, but the reason I'm going to give you this example is because it helps you understand why we speak less than we listen, right? We have to listen way more than we speak. In negotiations, in conversations, in meetings, if you're a team leader and you're having team meetings, like you should not be the one talking the entire time, right? So the story is Nelson Mandela was in an interview one time, and Nelson was asked, where do you get your leadership skills from? And he responded and he said, I get them from my father. And he said, I used to watch my father, who was a tribal leader. He said, I used to watch my father hold meetings with the tribal court. And he said, two things always stood out with my father. First thing was they always sat in a circle. There was no head of the table. And he said, so when they sat in a circle, everyone was equal, right? And he said, the second thing that always stood out was my dad rarely spoke. He would begin the meeting and then he would let everyone else speak. And while everyone else was speaking, he said, most of the time, they were bringing up problems and solving it amongst themselves without his input. And his father, at the end of the meeting, would take the collective information that he received from everybody talking for an hour or however long it was, and he would make a decision based on the information he was given, and also make a decision that he knew was good for the tribe because they came up with the answer and they didn't even know it. And the third thing that he was doing was giving them the power of leadership themselves, right? He was giving them the opportunity to not only voice their concerns, but bring solutions to the table. And I thought to myself, that is one of the most incredible examples that we can give for leadership, for communication, for negotiations, like you name it. That is the perfect example. It is the complete opposite of what you might be used to, where a leader gets in front of everybody or sits at the head of the table and says, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Everybody go, right? It's the very different setup. Okay. So again, taking it back to negotiations, whoever speaks first usually loses. Here's an example. A seller says, we won't accept anything under 500,000. And instead of immediately countering, you just stay quiet. Now, you guys may have seen this technique used before, and some of you may have used it. But imagine if you're sitting at a table and you've got an offer for $4.95 for your seller who has a price listed at $5.10, let's say. Just using example numbers here. And you show them this good, you know it's a good offer for $4.95, right? And you show it to them and they say, I'm not going to accept anything less than 500. And so what we would normally do, what an average salesperson would normally do, is they would go into and they would go, well, all right, so let's talk about this. Here are the comps, or, okay, I'll just go let them know that and see if we can negotiate, right? But the right thing to do, and try this out, they say, well, I won't accept anything less than 500, and you just don't answer them. You stay just super quiet staring at them. Just staring at them. Wait a while. By the way, 10 seconds feels like 100 hours when you're doing this. So don't stick your foot in your mouth by messing up the silence. 80% of the time, the seller's going to follow up with something along the lines of, but we can be flexible on these other terms. And that's going to help you with negotiation, right? Or they'll say, we won't go under 500. And then you stay quietly looking at them. And then they go, well, maybe we'll go 497. Right? Because they're coming down to where you need them to be. Okay. All right. So let's talk about anchoring and maximum advantage. All right. So anchoring for maximum advantage is setting up a first number in a negotiation that anchors the conversation. Okay. So what you're doing is you're giving a number, a price that anchors the entire conversation, the entire direction of the conversation. So by setting a bold, reasonable starting number, you create communicating with somebody. Let's say you have the buyer, home is listed for 500,000 or 520,000, right? And you know that you're expecting to close at 500 and the buyer offers 480, let's say. Instead of dropping immediately to 500, or you counter with 510 to keep negotiations higher, right? This is a negotiation tactic called anchoring. We're anchoring with a price point. So we know what we're listed for. We know what our seller would be willing to take. We know what we received. So we come back with a number that anchors them higher. That number, not the listing price, not where we want to be, and not what they offered, but that number that you give first, that 510, is the anchor. That's going to be the reference point that the conversation continues to come back to. And you need to always understand how to give the reference in conversation, right? They're going to say, hey, we came up, and you're going to say, but we came down. And you're going to keep that opportunity, right? And you're going to keep repeating the words 510, 510,000, 510, 510,000, and allowing them to have the opportunity to anchor into that. And they'll go back to their buyers with 510 in mind. They'll go back to their buyers negotiating in that piece. Okay. The other one is called the flinch method. All right. The concept here is when you react with shock or surprise to an offer, the other party begins to question their own number. Right? Have you ever done this to somebody, right? You got a listing for 520, and they come with an offer for 450, and you go, wow, that's much lower than I expected. How'd you come up with that? Right? That's an actual technique. Some of you are probably doing it subconsciously. Some of you don't do it. Some of you go 450, never going to fly. No, that's not what we want to do. We want to take never not going to fly and make it to something that's going to fly. We don't want to throw away opportunity, right? So let's say buyer offers 450 on a $500,000 listing. Instead of saying, that's too low, you're crazy, it's not going to work, you say, wow, that's way lower than expected. But dude, can you tell me how you came up with that number? And they're going to go, well, that's what my buyer wanted to offer, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but how did you come up with that number? And what it does, again, the concept here is that you're implanting into their mind, into their brain, right, that their numbers all messed up. that they should never have presented that number to begin with, right? That they have to question themselves. And so they go back to question their buyer. What made you, what made that happen? And so what you're doing now is you're putting pressure on the buyer to justify their order or offer or reconsider the pricing. Does that make sense to you guys? So far, so good. Give me a yes in the chat box if it makes sense to you guys so far. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Blanca, Susanna, Karina, Sonia. Appreciate you guys. Awesome. Blanca goes, and that's how I do things. I love it, man. I love it. I love it. All right, so here's the next one. Creating a win-win perception. Not a win-win opportunity, but a win-win perception, right? So the concept here is that people want to feel like they're winning all the time. Like, listen, the strongest negotiating technique you could ever use makes the other person feel like they won. Right? That makes sense. You give me a thumbs up, right? If you make the other person feel good about the entire opportunity, then, and they feel like they won for their client, but you know you got what you want, you don't have to throw it in their face. Let them win. It's a perception, right? And you can give small concessions that cost you a little bit, but feel super valuable to the other person, right? So buyer wants $10,000 off the home. Instead of dropping the price, maybe we go, hey, how about we keep the price the same, but I'll make sure you get maybe a $5,000 credit at closing, and I'll negotiate with the seller to maybe leave the washer and dryer. Or, you know, I saw that you really love that dining table. Maybe I'll talk to them about leaving that dining table, right? Because you got to be listening to these things when people are walking around the house. You know, I can't stand when I walk with a buyer into a house and the listing agent goes, okay, go ahead. Why am I showing the house? This is my first time there too, right? And also, if I'm showing the house and you're the listing agent, how are you attaining any knowledge for negotiation tactic and technique? You can't. You'll never be able to, right? Okay. So we go, so we're, again, they want a $10,000 credit. Go, listen, what if we do a 5? And I remember when you were walking around the house and you just fell in love with that dining table and that hutch that was in the dining room. You know, I think I could probably convince my seller to leave that behind. Would that work for you? Right. And now people start to feel like they got something of value, which, by the way, the dining table and the hutch probably cost the seller, you know, $1,500 a rooms to go or something like that, right? That's definitely not going to hurt them as much as an extra $5,000 off the price. Okay. All right. So the next one is known as tactical empathy and mirroring. Okay. I'm a huge thought process mirroring fanatic. Okay. I love the mirroring technique, right? What is this technique? This technique is somebody's hyper, you got to be hyper. Somebody slows down, you got to slow down. Somebody leans back in their chair, you lean back in your chair. Somebody crosses their arms, you cross your arms. Somebody leans forward, you lean forward, right? Mirror their energy, mirror them as an opportunity. If they speak a certain way, right? If they speak a certain way, okay, then you speak that way too. If you don't know how, then you could lose that person to work with, right? And so the concept is here is that people like those who understand them. Does that make sense to you? All right. Like, you know, you want to work with somebody who understands your, like, you as a human being, as a person, right? And then repeat the last few words of what somebody says is its mirroring technique. It allows them to open up more. So seller says, we need to sell quickly, but we don't want to take a loss. And you look at them and you go, so I understand that you need to sell quickly. We definitely don't want to take a loss. Does it sound dorky? Yeah, it sounds a little dorky. But if you mirror their words, they feel what? Heard. And if they feel heard, they feel like you're in this with them. If you ignore that statement, then they won't feel heard, and they're going to feel like you're not going to be attentive to the needs that they have in the sale of this property. So the seller says, okay, exactly. We just bought another home, but we don't want to pay 2 mortgages. Now you've learned more. Because you were capable of mirroring in them in their words and making them feel heard, they felt like they could share more information with you. And the more information that they shared was that they did buy another home somewhere else in another state, and they definitely don't want to have 2 mortgages. Now you have added ammunition. They need to sell fast. Nobody wants to take a loss, fast or slow, but they definitely don't want to pay 2 mortgages. How does that technique come? It comes, and this one I didn't even write down. It just popped in my head right now. This was known as the comparison technique, right? So the comparison technique says, I've got that client right there, and I go, how much is your other mortgage? Oh, it's $2,500. And how much is this mortgage? It's $3,000. Okay, let me ask you this. What's a better opportunity for you? To sell it to this person and reduce the price by $10,000, or to sit on the market 3 more months? What happens if they sit on the market 3 more months? They pay 2 mortgages for 3 more months. The math is not mathing, folks, right? So if they pay two mortgages for 3 more months, they might as well take the hit right now and get out of the situation, because it's much easier to take that hit than it is to come up with the extra $2,500 for the other mortgage. Okay? Now you know what the true pain point is, and that allows you to understand that pain point and use it as urgency to negotiate. So pain points, let's talk about that for a second. I always like to use the example, and I think I use this example all the time because it's happened to me so many times, where somebody is downsizing and moving to be closer to their grandkids, right? How many of you have ever had that situation, right? Somebody's just getting out of the big house and they're moving to go somewhere else to be closer to their kids so they can hang out with their grandkids, right? And for multiple reasons. They just want to be closer, or maybe, their child works a lot, so the grandkids need grandma and granddad around, right? Whatever the case is, the pain point is that they're far from their grandkids. So when you need urgency to negotiate, you just bring it up. Listen, what's more important? Selling this house and getting you to your grandkids, or sitting on the market and staying away from your grandkids for another 90 days? Right? Carlos says they usually think their house is really expensive. It's true. It's true. But why? Because they raised their kids there. They picked the paint color. They bought that really nice chandelier at Home Depot, and they don't make it anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just really feel that they've heavily invested in this opportunity. Okay. And then the next one I want to talk about is the deadline effect. All right. So the deadline effect, we create urgency. We force decisions. Look at a hesitant buyer. We go, the seller has 2 more showings tomorrow. If we submit today, I can lock in this deal before those other offers come in, right? Rocking and rolling. The psychologically, it pressures the buyer to act faster, to make a decision faster. Whether the decision is no or yes, irrelevant. We pressure them into making a decision, okay? The walkaway strategy. So let's talk about the walkaway strategy real quick. The concept here is that people want what they think they can't have, right? We all know this. People want what they think they cannot have, okay? And so by being willing to walk away, you gain significant leverage on it, all right? By being willing to walk away, you gain leverage. All right, so here's an example. Buyer refuses to budge from a lower offer. You say, cool. I totally understand that this home isn't a right fit for you. So let me know if anything changes. Imagine you representing the seller, right? And you are talking to the buyer's agent. And the buyer's agent's like, listen, my buyer's like, they're just not going to move. They're not going to move on the price. And you just go, you know what? I totally understand. I get it. I get that this house is not for your buyer. You might want to start showing them other stuff, because this one's not going to work for your buyer. This one's out of your buyer's reach. Ooh. right? What does that make somebody feel like? What? You're telling me I can't afford this? Right? Then they get mad at it. Well, what you mean I can't? What do you mean it's out of my reach? 60% of the time, the buyer re-engages with a better offer. 60% of the time, right? The buyer is going to re-engage with a better offer. Okay. The next closing is so out of all those strategies that we discussed right now, I'm gonna rename them all. Okay. The first one we went over was the power of silence. Then we went over anchoring for maximum advantage. Then we went over the flinch method. Then we went over the win-win perception. Then we went over the tactical empathy and mirroring. Then we went over the deadline effect. Then we went over the walk-away strategy. Out of all of those, which is your favorite? Type it in the box. Which is your favorite? Carlos, type me power of silence and walk away. Silence. Shayna says silence. Charmaine says silence. Everybody loves that one. Isn't it crazy how silence makes everybody feel uncomfortable, but we want to do it to people? It's awesome. I love this group. Leslie says, repeat the walk away. All right, I'll do that for you. All right, so walk away is super simple. All right. Again, people want what they think they can't have. And so what we're saying is that being willing to walk away lets you gain some leverage. So buyer refuses to budge from a lower offer. You're representing the sell side. Buyer says, I'm not willing to move anymore. You say, listen, I totally understand this home is not right for your buyer. Let me know if anything changes. You're taking it away from them. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through another one that I didn't even write down, and all of you can use this like pretty instantly if you're working with a buyer. Okay, I like to do something called the takeaway effect. All right, the takeaway effect means that I take away an opportunity from you when you say you don't want that opportunity, and it's a tough one because this is not this is not like the walk away where you're trying to get them to re-engage into it. This is literally removing it from them. And so let's say I'm going to show 3 houses. I take 3 printouts with me of those homes, right? I give them their 3 printouts and I have my own 3 printouts. And as we're walking through homes, I like to take notes on the printouts. What they say they like, what they say they don't like. I like to take notes. I'm not a superhuman. I'm not going to remember everything that happened that day. So I want to be able to reference to something and be able to come back to them later on with something they may have said. At the end of the 3 showings, I take the 3 papers and I put them on the back of my truck. And I go, out of these 3 homes, which one is first place, which one is second place, and which one is third place? And once they name them off, you know what I do? I take third place and I go, since this one came in third place, do it just like this, guys. I go, since this one came in third place right here, I'm just gonna get rid of this one. And I crumble it up right in front of them. I crumble up the paper just like this, make all the paper noise, right? And then I just throw it inside the back of my truck. That house is no longer available. You said that house was third place. Don't nobody want the third place house. Right? So I'm getting rid of it. When I do that, now they can only think about the 2. They just saw me throw away a house. Now they feel that I've taken that away. They can only think of 2 options now. And I go, hey, you said this one was first place and this one was second place. And I take first place and I put it on top of second place and I hold it up. And I go, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to write up an offer for first place. And I'm going to send it to you for signature. Okay? And if first place negotiations don't work out, then we'll take a look at second place. How's that sound to you? Now, notice, at no point in time did I say that they asked me to write an offer. Hear me out. At no point in time did they say, you know what, Dave, I love this house. Or no point in time did I say, you know what, I think you guys really like it. Would you like me to write up an offer? Why am I asking them a question they could say no to? I'm giving them direction. I am the consultant, folks. So are you. So I'm giving them direction. This is your first place house. Yes, this is your first place house. Now, some of you might be thinking, you know what, Dave? What if the house doesn't match anything that they wanted? Then you messed up bad, right? Because you didn't have a great buyer's consultation with them to show them what they should be seeing. So all three homes should have fit in the criteria of what they wanted to see. It should have matched their needs and their wants and hopefully some of their desires, right? So I go on that first one, I'm going to go ahead and head out and I'm going to head to the office and I'm going to go ahead and write up this offer. I'm going to do some research and make sure we're presenting the best price possible. I'm going to send it to you for signature so we can begin negotiating on this house. Does that sound good to you? And they go, yes. It's very rare that I get somebody who goes, no, I'm not ready. Right? Very rare. And then next thing you know, you send it to them and they're signing, or sometimes, guys, you're going to send it to them and they're going to go, you know, we were reading over the offer and we thought about it. We really don't want that house. Let's go look at 3 more. That's going to happen too. Okay. So don't, nothing that I'm giving you is a magic pill. It's all technique. It's all technique. Okay. Now, I want to go over some things with you that is like a little bonus extra. Okay. So here's the bonus. When you're negotiating with somebody who lacks negotiation skills, okay, you can often identify the weaknesses early and use them to your advantage. So I'm going to give you some key signs to look out for when you're negotiating with somebody. And these are the key signs that will help you understand whether or not they are a good negotiator or not. Okay. The first thing is that they talk too much. All right. The skilled negotiators listen way more than they speak. I just gave you a whole story on Nelson Mandela's family, right? Or his father. Like, I gave you a whole story on how we use the power of silence, right? So I also told you that he who speaks first usually loses. Okay. By the way, these techniques don't only work in sales, they work in relationships. So try them on your spouses. They work on your kids. They work on everybody. Everything. Okay. If the other party keeps talking, right, they are likely to reveal way too much information. And that makes it easier for you to control the conversation. If they're not skilled negotiators, they're just going to start talking out of nervousness. They're going to let it go, right? So how do you leverage this? You stay silent and you let them explain their position. And they are going to talk their way into a weaker stance. So to give you all the ammunition you need to be a better negotiator. Okay, the other one is that they accept the first offer way too quickly. There was no negotiation skills. All right. Now, if you have a house that's overpriced or priced a little bit higher than market and you get full price cash offer, yeah, accept that quickly. That doesn't make you a not skilled negotiator. It makes you smart, right? But sometimes you know that strong negotiators will always counter if the initial offer is only so-so or just good. If it's a great offer, then you take it. But if it's just a good offer, negotiate, counter, try to put some more money in your client's pocket. If they say that works for me right away, they likely don't understand the power of pushing back, the power of trying to take things away from people. And so you could leverage this by probably asking for more. So start with higher and aggressive offers, right? If they're going to take the first thing that you gave them right away, you now know that you have power to get more after inspection, get more on maybe including some furniture, get more on maybe including all the pool stuff, materials in the back. If they can't negotiate, just get as much as you can for your client. You're working for your client. That's why we build these skills, right? The other one is that they get emotional, okay? Now, this is one that I never understood. I never understood why real estate agents get emotional during negotiation for a property that they are not buying with money that is not theirs. I've never understood that. Okay. Clients can be emotional because clients are putting the money up. But why are we emotional as real estate professionals? This is a no emotion game. It's pen and paper. And there's no money on our behalf until we get paid and actually close a full deal. Right? So if your competitor in the deal is showing frustration, anger, or depression throughout it, they're not in control. They have no control over this. Okay. Emotional reactions often mean that they're negotiating from a place of weakness rather than a place of strategy. While you guys are going to walk away from this with some new strategies, and look, you're likely not to remember every single thing I tell you today, but you'll remember one or two things and they'll pop up in your head when you're negotiating. And by the way, if you role play this and you practice this with the people around you, winning. I practice it with everybody. My kids, my wife, my mom. I use negotiating skills in everything. Right? So it comes much easier when I'm defending my clients. Okay. If they're emotional, again, they're not using strategy. They're coming from a place of weakness. You can lose this. You can leverage this by staying calm and composed the entire time. Which, by the way, when somebody's massively emotional and you're calm and composed, it makes them even more emotional. Have you ever noticed that? Right? The calmer you are, the more pissed off they get. The more pissed off they get, the less control they have of the situation. Right? So now you have an opportunity to use what we call tactical empathy by acknowledging their feelings, but keeping the negotiations logical. Hey, man, I can see why this really frustrates you. I mean, I can't, but we're using this. It's negotiation, right? Okay. Another thing is they hesitate before responding. So when you ask somebody a straight up question and you don't get a straight up answer and you get a walkabout or a hesitation, then you know that they're not skilled negotiators. If they pause too long after you make some sort of offer or comment or question, they likely lack the confidence and they need time to think about it. Skilled negotiators already know their numbers and objectives. They're ready to go. They know how to answer. They shoot from the hip. Okay. If they hesitate, you can follow up with, you seem unsure in this particular situation. So what concerns you? And this allows you to put some pressure on them to justify their position. Okay. They justify too much in the offer. Okay. A strong negotiator states their offer with confidence. A weak negotiator says things like, I can offer 500 because, well, I talked to my partner and the market, we think it's, it's fair and blah, 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 blah. They're trying to justify their offer, right? And so you can leverage this by allowing them to ramble. Again, listen more than we speak, right? Allow them to ramble on, talk about how they talked to their partner about it, and they studied the market last night like you haven't been doing this for years, right? And they think it's a fair offer based on what they saw with the Zillow estimates, right? And blah, blah, blah. And then you go, cool. I can appreciate your concern and all this, but here's a counter with a firm and confident offer. And that's how you're leveraging that. You let them ramble, and then you counter with a firm and confident response. All right, the next one is that they don't ask questions. Good negotiators ask a lot of questions because you need information to negotiate, right? You need information to use. Information is the gold mine in negotiations. So good negotiators will always ask a lot of questions to gather information. If they simply listen and respond without digging deeper, they're likely inexperienced. And you can leverage this by taking control of the conversation and by leading with questions yourself. All right. The next one is that they focus on the price only. They don't know how to negotiate anything else. And guys, we're in real estate. There's so many pieces of this we can negotiate. So many pieces. Buying down points, getting credits for whatever you need credits for, including furniture, including supplies, adding a warranty. There's so many things, right? So many things that we can negotiate in a home sale. And the people who are solely focused on price, it's very obvious that they're a weak negotiator, because weak negotiators see the deal as just about that one number. While pros like us, well, we know that there are terms, there are conditions, there are timelines, there are concessions that can be negotiated. Okay. And so you leverage this by shifting the focus to other aspects like closing costs and contingencies and financing terms to get you more value, to get your client more value. All right. Another thing that they'll do is they keep checking with somebody else. Right. So if they constantly say, I get to check back with my boss or my team leader or my broker, or I get to check back with my spouse or my partner, or I get to check back with my parents, or whatever the case is, it means that they are not the decision maker and lack tremendous confidence. Okay. And when that happens, you can leverage it by pushing for a response. Well, what would you personally feel comfortable agreeing to right now? Like if it was just you and you didn't have to ask anybody else, what would you personally agree to right now? Just so I have a baseline. Okay. And then you work from that baseline. Another thing they'll do is they'll flinch or react too strongly. So if they physically flinch or sigh, right? You're negotiating with somebody and they go, oh, right? Or they look shocked at your offer, they may be inexperienced in handling tough negotiations. So you can leverage that by using this reaction as a sign that you can push harder and negotiate more. And other ones are if they make unnecessary concessions. Like a weak negotiator might say, I was going to ask for 500, but I'll do 480 to make this easy. What? And that's happened to me 100 million times, right? Like a buyer comes in on one of my listings, they were really going to ask, they were really going to offer 500, but I told them, let's go in at 480 and make it just easy and let's get this deal done. And I'm like, wow, you suck, right? They lower their own position before any counter comes in. And so how to leverage, if you're leveraging this, you're leveraging it by offering the concession, ask for more. If they're going to offer it, ask for more. Always get more out of it for your clients. This helps you recognize these. If you can recognize these weaknesses, by the way, and stay composed and ask smart questions and control the conversation, then you're going to be extremely more strategic. And you know what? You don't have to remember the names of any of these strategies, right? You just have to remember this. You look out for their weaknesses, you stay composed, and you ask smart questions, and you always control the conversation. If all you remember is that, and you kept that running in the back of your head every time you're in the middle of a conversation or negotiating or at a listing appointment or working with a buyer that's fighting on price or negotiating with the other side on a contract, if you understand that you stay composed, you ask smart questions, you control the conversation, you're going to consistently win. That's going to make you massively more confident in your activity, and it's going to help you be more strategic without you even really knowing it, right? Okay. Now, how many of you guys got some like type in the chat like yes if you got something really good out of today and you're going to be using some of this stuff. Steven says, I feel like my wife is a master at wait, feels like my wife is a master at the silent treatment. Love it, Steven. Awesome, man. I'm glad. Shayna, Blanca, Sonia, Karen, Jeanette, Janet. What's up, Janet? Leslie, Carlos, Mark. Thank you. Nadine, Javier. All right. I'm glad that you guys got some great information out of today. What I'm going to ask is that you guys please use this stuff. Blanca, do you have your hand up, Blanca? Did you want to ask something?
I just had a quick question because I know you were talking about how to handle my phone is in 1%, so I'm sorry because but for example, what about the ones that knows it all? That they're not exactly drug negotiator, but they actually the one that dictating absolutely everything that whether it's gonna offer or it's a seller, because they know. They know
Yeah.
I'm very good at negotiating, and actually I take a lot of pride on that. And I'm very much I love it. I love everything that you said over here. But I have found some of them that they know, and then they talk to the lender, for example, and they know more than the lender. And then
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, but this and that, and then I'm trying to explain to them how the process or whatever. Like I don't want to waste my time explaining and why I'm the dumps and whatever. So usually what I've been doing is like, you know what? That's the way you want to do it. Go ahead, or that's the way you believe, because
So
honestly, it's
I'm
kind of
gonna
sort
give
of
you the
scenario.
technique. You cannot explain something to someone who knows it all. Ever. Okay? You cannot explain something to someone who knows it all. Someone who knows it all is not going to easily receive your consultation. I've had coaching situations where I work with somebody and this actually led me to completely revamping how I accept clients as a coach. Because I used to, hey, you're willing to pay me, let's coach, right? And then I would sit and coach somebody a couple of times and they knew more than me apparently, right? So I'm like, hey, can I ask you a question? Are you paying me so that I could just listen to you tell me what you want to do? Or are you paying me so that I could help you grow? Which one is it? Right? Because some people they think they know it all, right? So what do I do with the know-it-alls? She was talking about how she gets tired of explaining. You don't explain. You can't teach a know-it-all something. Okay, what you can do is a couple different things. One, I let them go ahead and talk, give all their reasoning behind it, and then I ask them, "How did you come up with this information? Can you help me understand?" Hey, I love where you're going with this. How did you come up with this? And usually is, I was having cigars with Cousin Pete last night, and Cousin Pete bought a house 7 years ago, and Pete said he did this and that and that and this. Huh, interesting. So he bought a house 7 years ago. How many houses has he bought since then? No, just that house. So the only experience that you're taking this from is something that happened 7 years ago, one time to one person. And I explain it to them so they can hear out loud how stupid that sounds. If that doesn't work, I allow them to lose. So what do I do? Somebody says, no, I'm not going to pay more than that because, I know this and I know that and I know this and I know that. I go and I try my technique and it doesn't work. I go, okay, cool. Let's write that offer. Offer goes out, offer gets declined. They don't even counter sometimes because it's so stupid. And I go, we've been declined. Well, what did they counter with? They didn't care to counter. Let them lose. Let them lose. Because oftentimes when somebody loses something, it goes back to the other technique where we're talking about, where we said people oftentimes want what they feel like they can't have. And so if they lost that opportunity and they feel like they can't have it anymore, they want it even more. 50% of them are going to say, okay, well, let's take the number up and go back. And 50% of them are going to try and find the equivalent home. And they're never going to feel good about anything they see ever again. And you're going to have to reset their minds. Okay. And by the way, when we start moving more and more into the market where there's a ton of listings out there and there's a lack of buyers, as we move further into that market, okay, where it becomes a buyer's market, a strong buyer's market, that's going to happen to buyers left and right because they're going to feel like they have so many other options. So why should I settle on this perfect house that has everything that I need, want, and desire, and more? There's probably something better out there. Then they'll go see 3, 4 more, 5 more houses over the next couple of days. And then they'll say, you know what? They'll say, Charmaine, listen, that first one that we saw on Monday, let's make an offer on that one. Charmaine goes, I'm sorry, that one sold already. And if that one sells, they'll never feel like they can find something equivalent to it. And it's going to require a hard reset for them. And that's something, unfortunately, I don't know how to tell you to get them to hard reset. That's something they got to go do. They got to let go of it. Okay. Any questions from you guys? Any other questions that you might have? All right. If today was fire, I might create a lesson plan PDF and send it out to everybody. And so that way you could see like all of this information on the lesson plan. And then of course we'll send the video out later on. Would the lesson plan by PDF be good for you guys? Yeah. All right. Awesome. So I'll send it to you guys. Michael, just remind me to send this to you so that way you could put it into PDF and get it out to everybody. Okay. Thank you, sir. All right, guys. Have a great Thursday. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you next couple weeks.